All right, we're going to compare my man Danny to Spencer Strider here for mechanical analysis. So let's start by bringing Danny into his leg lift. Let's bring Spencer into his leg lift. Obviously, this is different because Spencer is on a mound, Danny's on flat ground, but we're going to do our best to compare just to show some key points of the delivery. So as you can see right here, both of them, especially for Spencer, because he's on a mound, you see he goes into leg lift and immediately starts going down the hill. Right there. Starts riding that back hip. Danny up top, even though he's on flat ground, you can see he's really starting to ride that back hip really well compared to especially in the beginning when he first started. So now he's in a position right here where his front leg is closed. You look at both of them, right? Closed front leg. That means their foot is not facing home plate. Closed front leg. Back leg loaded pretty well. Back leg really loaded here for Spencer. Eyes on target. Glove going to target. Eyes on target. Glove still down, but eventually going to get up, as you'll see there. Right, what we see here now, as we take it a few more frames, right, is you'll see Spencer's a lot more loaded in that back leg. His front leg is still closed. His arm is down in a good position. So for Danny up top, his front leg is starting to leak open a little bit. As you can see, his foot's starting to turn over towards home plate while his back leg is still loaded. Glove going towards home plate, pointing at home plate is awesome. Eyes going towards home plate is awesome. Arm getting up in a good position back here, not getting too high. That's awesome. Now, whereas Spencer down here is kind of taking a little bit more time, a little slower and deliberate with really loading and getting out. Like you'll see right here, he's almost down the mound. I know it's blurry, but his front leg is still closed. His arm is still down. His back leg is still loaded. So he's really riding that energy, that momentum down the mound and gathering as much potential energy as possible to get through the baseball. For Danny up here, you could see that front leg swings a little bit still. Back leg is loaded nicely, but that front leg, right, if you just zoom in, just zone in on that front leg, you'll see how it looks like he's in a loaded position, but that front leg is swinging open to catch him. Because then what happens is as he gets into front foot strike, you get a little bit of leakage from that back hip where you're not firing that back hip optimally. Compare that to Spencer, obviously major leaguer, best in the game, but just to give you an idea of what you want to get close to looking like is if you look down here, he rides that back hip, stays closed, stays closed, stays closed, and then as this hip starts to fire, now he starts to open up, right? So watch this front foot. It's closed all right here, loaded back here. And now as this hip starts to fire, now he's opening up right before front foot strike. And his arm is getting into that awesome position because he's getting a lot of tension right here in the midsection. So now as he enters front foot strike right here, you can see his hips, everything's open and exploding. His shoulders right here are facing third base. His arm is getting up into that good 90-degree angle that we always talk about. And then he launches everything forward. Good, strong, stable front leg right here. Trunk launching forward. See how that leg straightens out? That front leg really stabilizes. All that energy forward, boom. when that front leg stabilizes and comes like that, what you'll see is the knee goes in and then the hips go forward. So you see this, boom, that pop brings energy up, out through the baseball. And you could see where he's releasing. He's in a really good position here. He's out over his front foot. Now if we take it back to Daniel up top, you see Daniel come out when he gets to this position here. Yes, he's very wide open right here, as you could see. Hips are trying to stay closed, but the front foot is going into foot strike and his back leg is still loaded. So not optimizing his lower half. But now when he goes into front foot strike right here, you can see he stabilizes pretty well, but we're not seeing that leg pop to bring the hips up. See the hips come up a little bit, leg locks out a little bit, but that's also because you're not producing nearly as much energy as this guy. But it could also be a strength issue as well that we want to focus on when our single leg work. Right, so we want to be here, explode through it. Looks like your arm is getting in a better position. I know in previous analysis, we said this elbow was a little too low. I think you could get a smidge higher. If we look where Spencer is here compared to you, you could see that you're just a little lower. So like you're maybe just even with the shoulder, maybe just below it. Spencer is pretty much even with the shoulder the whole time. And then you could see, I know it's blurry, but his elbow is a little bit higher up here, a little higher than the shoulder. Whereas yours seems to be right here, which is like just even. Right, so I would just try to get that arm up a little bit more. It doesn't have to be super high. You're not throwing, playing cricket, but just something to keep in mind because we just want to avoid arm drag. Because what can happen is you'll see right here is you end up leading with the elbow, and that's going to put some stress on your arm that you don't want. It's also going to rob you of some velocity because you could see right here with Spencer down below. Again, I know it's blurry, but you can see his elbow is higher than his shoulder. So when he launches, it's more like a catapult. As opposed to, for you, Daniel, right here, you can see when you come across, it's more of a drag and then an extension, if you could see what I mean. So you'll see it come here. See, it's pretty low. It drags through, and then with the elbow out in front, then you're extending. Whereas down below over here, you'll see Spencer gets into that 90 degree. His torso rotates, and then his elbow is higher than his shoulder. And when he gets here, everything launches. That's obviously optimal. That's what we want to strive for. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's just something to keep in mind. Right? And then as Daniel finishes, everything's going forward, which is awesome. Front foot, everything falling forward towards home plate. We just got to learn to stabilize it a little bit better, which we will as mechanics get better, as you get stronger. So you're in a good spot in that sense. Then you'll see as Spencer comes through, he doesn't move, he stabilizes. He even falls off a little to first base because he's so rotational, so powerful. So that's really that. All right, so just quick recap. What I want you to work on, Daniel, is that lower half. Be conscious in the med ball movements, trying to keep that front leg closed, meaning don't swing this foot out. Think of Spencer down below. All right, see how his leg is straight and he keeps it as closed as possible. His leg only opens when his back foot fires, when his back hip. See how his back hip starts to come through and then his foot turns over. So what he's doing is he's very conscious of He's very conscious of loading this back leg and then exploding it through. And that's how he opens. Whereas for you up top, it looks as if as you're going forward, you are trying to reach with the front leg. You're opening, you're swinging and reaching to try to get momentum. And then you're getting right here where you're almost landing and your back leg is still loaded. And then as you land, your hips are coming through late. And because of that, you're losing some power. Like you'll see as soon as you get into front foot strike here, right, your torso, your upper body, and your hips are pretty much in the same position facing home plate. And then your arm is dragging through. So that's robbing you of a lot of velocity. Whereas if you look at Spencer right here, down below, as he gets into front foot strike, right there, you can see his hips are really opening and his shoulders and everything is still back. So that's creating a lot of tension in the midsection, which allows him to then be in this position where he can rotate through. Look at that rotation as he throws. As he gets here, now his trunk is fully facing home plate and his upper body is really starting to whip around. And then he gets really good trunk movement here, which we spoke about, where he comes up, boom, upon release, gets that extra boost right there. So for you, Daniel, up top, the arm path looks a lot better. Right, I really like that. You're coming out of the glove, down to the hip. You're leading with the elbow up, getting in that good arm position. You might be getting a little too high up here, where that elbow is coming a little too far back, behind the back. I want you to try to come straight up. Again, you look at Spencer right here. He comes out, and he's just coming straight up. See how his elbow at that point does not get really far high or really far behind his back compared to where you are. It's always good to see comparison so you could really see the difference, right? So you're here, he's here, right? See how much higher you are? But then what's interesting is when he comes through and his arm turns over to go into layback, then you see his elbow come up here as he catapults. Whereas for you, your arm kind of drops. You see how you're up high, your arm drops, and now you're doing the opposite. Your arm is dragging across as opposed to being here and catapulting up. Again, just something to be conscious of, especially when you're doing the arm path drills. We're just trying to build good patterns. I mean, you've come such a long way in I think you're only like 6 weeks in now, maybe even less. I got to check your program. We're just going day by day by day, and it moves pretty quick. But you've made tremendous progress, man. And I think you're on the right track. But these are some pointers and some things I just want you to be aware of. I'm happy to answer any more questions you have about this or explain anything further if you need it. But the arm path looks like you're in a good spot. I just don't want you pulling with that elbow too much. Front side is way better. You're really getting good leverage out of that. We really just got to clean up that lower half and continue to get stronger. And I think you're really going to see some good progress. Let me know what you think.